Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Andie Monet, who's the founder of Strategic Solutions and creator of the Roadmap for Strategic Growth. Andie, welcome to the program.
Hello, Mike. I'm super excited to be on here and hopefully provide some value to some listeners.
Yeah, well, I know we will, because when value is presented from the perspective of your personal and professional life experience, it comes to life. So everyone has their own journey, and I want to hear about what your journey is up to this point in your career, and then talking about solutions and growth from a strategic approach. So I'm excited to chat with you, but what brought you through your entrepreneurial journey?
Ooh. Good question, and it's long, but I'll give you the 30-second version. Is
Okay.
You and I have not spoken about this, but the reason I originally started a business was because I was 16 years old and homeless. As I found out, my single mother abandoned me, and I was like, well, I got to figure this out somehow, so let's start a business. And so.
That's not the normal thing that you think when you're 16 and homeless, I'm sure.
No, I got lucky because I don't know where that came from, but it was a blessing, even though I didn't realize it at the time. And I failed a few times, several times, in fact, and I figured it out the hard way, as they say. And 30 years later, I have a lot of experience and a lot of skills, and I'm super excited because I really, at the end of the day, want to help people avoid the challenges and pitfalls and pain that I had to suffer. So it's an odd way to explain how I started my business, but yes.
Yeah, but you know what? I think that sometimes people are like, well, I started off from meager means, and I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and they almost say that apologetically. But I think that when people resonate with your story and your progress and your journey, they realize that you can be the guide that kind of goes, oh, no, let's come over here to the left a little bit and avoid this pothole because I've been there and done that before, as opposed to, the quote unquote trust fund baby. Let's say that someone was like, oh, well, you know what? I was born into wealth and I've never worked a day in my life, but I took this one online course and I could teach you how to start your own business and scale it. You wouldn't trust a word they said because they haven't really been to that true school, the school of hard knocks.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I really have to say there's so many things that I caution small businesses about because you think or what the website says or what you Googled. And, honestly, a lot of that's not particularly accurate, as we know. But, my biggest thing is how do I redirect and re-guide and, course correct if I can, right? So, but I won't know the help course correct if you don't tell me what's going on if you're a client of mine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a really big point, is don't be afraid of the flaws. I interviewed Eric Qualman, the social media guru, and I'm sure he didn't come up with this, or maybe if he did, then kudos to him, but he calls it being flawsome, being awesome in spite of your flaws.
No, absolutely. And I'll even say a little bit more than that, in the sense of, we all, I think, naturally want to avoid making mistakes, but that's the best thing about owning a business, which is, kind of a twisted thought, but you have to make those decisions, good or bad, and you have to learn from them. And if you're afraid to make any mistake, you're not going to make any progress. And so one of the analogies I tell people is if you get in your car and you're in the driver's seat and you turn the car on, you can't change direction unless you're moving.
Oh, yeah.
And so your car has to be literally going forward with momentum before you can change direction. You can't change direction if you're standing still. And so it's kind of my analogy of making mistakes. I mean, you want to, avoid ones you can avoid and minimize some that you can minimize, but ultimately you still have to be moving in a direction.
100%. And you think about, I've used this analogy a lot regarding a train, because my son, when he was little, he loved trains. And you think about a train that's at the station and not going anywhere. To get that thing up and running, boy, it takes a lot of energy. But then if it's going down the track, and then you make that little, whatever you call it, like the track changer direction thing, and it just veers a little bit to the left. Boy, that's an easy thing, because it's already got a head of steam and momentum, and it's just that nice, easy, smooth. But you've got to get started, and many times getting started is half the battle, because now you're into that momentum.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And with momentum, if you don't take the first step, like, it's never going to happen. Like, if you don't add the gas or add the coal to the train, or, even if it's on, you have to press the gas, which in the train is not a gas, but, you have to take those steps. And sometimes, especially for small business owners, they're incredibly scary steps, but again, messy is better than no momentum at all.
Yep. You, what is it? Done is better than perfect, or in the business sense, the MVP, the minimum viable product. If you have that vision in your mind of, here's what I want to get done, get it started, get it out there into the world, whatever that it is, a course, a product, and then tweak it and see what people say about it, and get feedback. And so many times that encourages you to get that momentum going, because you see it come to life as well. It doesn't need to be hidden in the shadows and perfect before you launch it, because your version of perfect might be well beyond what your target audience needs, and you don't know that until you get it up and running.
Well, and absolutely. And in addition to that, a lot of business owners feel like they have to be experts at something before they can have a viable business. But if you know something, you're always going to know more than somebody else, but not as much as other people. And that's enough to help people. I mean, I'm super, super big on helping people. And you can, I have so many examples of that with my clients, but you don't have to be an expert as long as you're obviously moral, and ethical, and make good decisions for your clients. But as long as you know more than them, you can teach them something, and people will pay for that.
You hit on something that we probably can spend the next 4.5 hours on, which is what I like to call, and it's not just me, I've seen it before, but it's called imposter syndrome. And you're like, well, I'm no expert because, I just feel like, if you make me say I'm an expert in this, then I just feel like I'm an imposter. Well, it's to your point, like what you just said, it's like you've, read my Forbes article on this or my whatever, because imposter syndrome is a thing. And what I would say is go back through some of your emails. So whether it's your sent emails or what, like where you've responded to clients' questions. And maybe this is a wonderful exercise for people, number one, to get some of the pain points that you saw, but go through some of your sent emails looking for maybe some of the words like questions or answer to your question or in response to, and look at what you responded to the incoming email, like, oh, hey, I was wondering if you could help me understand whatever it is about your business, right? Whatever that might be. Look at your responses. Well, you know more than that person. They're asking you. And number one, that should bolster your confidence. But number two, start collecting those, because those become fuel for teaching other people some of those similar things. So maybe if one person had that question, you can write up a piece of content to teach someone else about that. And now that becomes a tool. And I think that's a really wonderful observation.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And, talking about the imposter syndrome is such a topic. I mean, I could talk about this forever, but I don't teach mindset, but I love mindset, and I think mindset is super important. And after 33 years of what I do, I still have imposter syndrome, and I know a lot of stuff. Yeah. I mean, I have clients like Monster Beverage, Coca-Cola, Walmart, Costco, Department of Defense. I have a lot of clients that come to me and ask me for my opinion, and I still have that every once in a while, and it's just a
well, you know what that shows?
Thing.
It shows that you are this rare breed called human. I mean, for real.
Oh,
if
so
somebody
true.
thinks they're Teflon and I'm untouchable and I don't ever. Everyone's got that feeling. But then guess what?
Yes.
You put a microphone in your hand and get in front of an audience or a podcast or a group or one-on-one Zoom with a client, and they have a question about something that you're well versed in, and flip, the switch goes on, and you're like, okay, let's. For sure. And I'm just confident, just from even your tone of our conversation here, you're not a condescending, oh, I can't believe you asked that question. What, you are like, okay, let's roll up our sleeves and figure this out. So that kind of leads me to your roadmap for strategic growth. Tell us a little bit about what that is and what you assist brands and business owners with through the roadmap.
Oh, I love it. Yes. The reason I created Roadmap for Strategic Growth was because I think a lot of, kind of going back to the imposter syndrome and expert fear, is that you can do a lot, but you need the tools, you need the information, right? And so Roadmap for Strategic Growth is kind of like a really shortened version of an MBA program, although I don't really want to say that because it's not so much academic, but it's like, here, these are the tools that you use, this is why you use them, and this is how they're important. So for example, one thing could be, everybody thinks of a financial statement as, okay, what's my profit? But you can do so much more besides just profit. There's so much analysis that goes into it that tells you where you can improve your business, either sales points or where your cost points are, or which customers you need to focus on more or less, or which products you want to focus more on or less. So there's so much stuff you can get out of the data, out of your business, but also teaches strategies like, okay, well, what do I do with my business development? Who should I talk to? How do I grow? Where should I grow? So that I have analysis tools that you can do on your own that I teach you, of course, where you're like, this is where I am. The whole point is, this is where I am. In a year, this is where I want to be. And how do I get from A to B with actual steps and actual, not just strategy, because strategies, I think, can be amazing. But if you don't have action steps, then it doesn't matter how great your strategy is, right? And so I'm super big on taking action. I mean, you're like, I'm going to rule the world, right? But okay, but what does that mean? And what does it look like? And so one of the analogies I use is, if you're driving from San Francisco to New York, where do you go? Well, you go east. Great. Now what, right? Yep. Do you go through north of the country? Do you go south of the country? Do you go through the middle of the U.S. on Route 40? How many hours are you going to be driving? How many hours are you going to be sleeping? Where are you going to stop for gas? How much money does it cost to get there? Like all of these other things that are involved besides just saying I'm going east. And so that's kind of like the analogy that I use for a roadmap for strategic growth, because, okay, if you know where you want to be in a year, let's get you there, not only by providing strategies, but actual action steps to get there. And what I really, really love about the course is that the tools that you have in the course, you can use forever. Like whether you're 1 year in business, 5 years in business, 20 years in business, they're still applicable and useful. So let's just get you your first year. Well, what happens at the end of that year? You still use the same tools to continue building your business, and you know what to expect. And one of the things that is the biggest reason people don't really move forward or know what to do is obviously they don't know what to do. So I quantify that. I quantify what you don't know into these are the things you should know and why.
The thing that I like about that is, if someone is listening to this going, oh, that sounds all great, but I don't know where to start. And you can say, where do you want to go and where's the gap and how do you need to, but when you can have that perspective from yourself, from the external looking in and helping that person and guiding them and saying, okay, you said you need to be here, but you're not here now. And what's it going to take to get there? Well, begin with the end in mind, the Stephen Covey concept. So one step before the very end, you need to be right around here. And then one step before that, you need to be doing this. And now all of a sudden you walk them backwards into, okay, so that means that today you're here. And that means that in 1 month or whatever time frame that you should be doing this. And they're like, I can do that. So it's like, show me the checklist, the roadmap, the blueprint, whatever you want to think of it as, I can do those little things. And I think that if you were to say to someone, oh, all you have to do is this whole long, I remember that here's a wonderful analogy. There are so many times that I have not purchased something because it sounded good at the outset, but then they were like, oh, and it's going to also include 497 modules of this. And I'm like, I don't have time for that. But if you, you tell me, and there are even some tools, like some membership plugins that when you do have, let's say, 10 modules to teach your clients, you only let module 1 and 2 go live and be visible at once. So they realize that the overarching benefit of your program is going to be, whatever, but they log in and they don't feel overwhelmed. So talk a little bit about when you work with someone and you help them with that vision and you're like, I'm right here beside you. We're going to take that first step, that first module. How do you help them from feeling overwhelmed?
That's a great question. And one of the things, there's two things that I do, but one of the things is in the first module, I don't have them do really much of anything. It's more like, if you had the perfect business, what would you like to see for yourself? And that's more of a dreaming exercise. More than, I want to make $100,000 in next year. Well, that's great. Or, hey, I want to buy a house for my mother because she's aging. Well, that, all of those, like, kind of just, let yourself go into what you would love to have. And so that's kind of like a primer to the more detailed technical stuff that comes later. But in the beginning, we just want to get you ready for wanting to change your life, wanting to change your business, wanting to know what it is you want for your business. And obviously, a lot of times, sales is the first thing that comes to mind, but there's so many other things. And so there's these exercises and templates that I have, just really a brainstorming exercise. Like, what do I want that costs money? What do I want? How much money do I want to make in a year? What do I want for my family? What do I want for myself? And so, like I said, it sort of primes the pump. But the other piece to that, which is in all the courses, I always have live Q&A, always, because it's not just about doing it for yourself. It's about having some guidance too, like what does that mean? Or some things that are going to be easy for one person is not going to be easy for another. So I want to be that resource for people where they know that they can call me without, nickel and diming them like some consultants do, like, okay, I'm going to charge you every 7 minutes. Well, who wants to call that consultant, right? So it's just, I want to be there for them. And the reason I created the course is because I can't have hundreds of clients all at the same time. There's just not enough time in the day. But this was a way where I can help the people that really want help, but also want to do it themselves because, they have budget constraints, and I get that, but also have a one-on-one piece to it.
100%. So let's talk a little bit about through your roadmap. What is one of the first steps that you will take someone through to clarify with them?
Well, for sure, you can't know where you want to be if you don't know where you are now. And that sounds kind of hokey to say, but it's like, I know where I am now. But, quantifying where you are now. What's the health of your business? What's your salary? What's your sales, level? What are your costs involved? Do you have employees already? Do you want employees? Like where? Honestly, and I don't even have to know this because there's the do-it-yourself part of it, but you have to be honest with yourself to be able to move forward, right? And so let's quantify where your business is right now, and then go from there, right? So I just think it's so much easier to start with, first there's two ways to do it. Start with where you are now, and then find out where you want to go. But I actually, as we sort of talked about, I like starting with where do you want to be, because you want that vision for yourself. Yes. And then once you define where you want to be and how that looks and why you're even taking the course, right? Then we go back to, okay, now let's come back to reality. Let's come back to earth. Let's find out where you are now and quantifying that, like I said, because if you can't quantify it, you can't measure it. If you can't measure it, you can't create measurable goals. If you can't create measurable goals. How do you know you're going to get there, right?
You're just running around in circles.
So I'm big on quantifying qualitative thoughts and goals when at all possible.
I think one of the benefits that you would agree with of quantifying those goals is when it is clarified and polished up really, really well, you do not feel pushed to reach that goal. You feel pulled toward it. And there's a big difference there, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I start with the vision first, because it's, the one thing, who doesn't want more sales in their business, right? But when you're wanting more sales because you have to pay the bills, it's different than I see this great thing for myself. So I don't mind working the extra hour, or I don't mind making the extra call, or I don't mind, doing the extra actions that are involved when I know where I'm going to be and how much it's going to benefit me.
Yeah. Yeah, and just like in marketing, push marketing is yelly and buy now and deadline, but pull marketing is, well, hey, guess what, Andie? You mentioned that you need this. Let me tell you some pros and cons, and let me give you this piece of research here that I saw online. This will help you make your decision, and hey, let me know how I can help you. And people feel so much differently about that when they can learn and make a decision on their own. They don't feel pushed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll even add to that and say, when a lot of people say, well, what should I do? And I always say it's not what I think you should do, it's what you think you should do, but I can tell you the pros and cons to your decision. I can tell you what I would do in my situation, but, my situation and my experience and my skills and my life is different than anybody else, right? So, Yes, you can make any decision you want. But my big thing, I'm super big on education. 80%, I feel like my biggest job in my business is to educate you. And then what you do with it is your decision. But at least you have the information. But if you don't have the information, how can you make a good decision? So telling people the pros and cons of their decision and alternative options and the pros and cons of that is really the biggest thing I want people to understand about what I do.
Well, Andie, I think we could keep on keeping on and bring up more topics, but I think we've hit on some really powerful, heavy pieces of advice. What would you say is the best place that someone could start to reach out and connect with you and learn a little bit more about what you provide in your roadmap for strategic growth?
Well, I always do complimentary strategy sessions. Did I say that? Strategy sessions. Yes. I can do that. And you can find that at andiemonet.com or also roadmapforstrategicgrowth.com. Both of those have the strategy session buttons. And I love to talk with people because it really kind of, once they verbalize what they're thinking, their business comes to life. And I can help guide them, even if, regardless of whether they move forward, but at least get them in the right direction.
Excellent. Well, Andie, I will make sure that link is in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. I'm excited.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.